He was 67 years old. Every morning he drank a glass of baking soda water, believed it helped with circulation, and even a bit with intimacy. He saw it online, a home remedy, simple, cheap. And like many men his age, he just wanted something that gave him back a little strength, a little confidence. But just 3 weeks later, he was in the emergency room, heart racing, blood pressure sky high, dizziness that wouldn't stop. The cause? Not a heart attack, not a stroke. It was that little white powder he trusted. Baking soda can support certain functions in the body, but only when used correctly, and only if you truly understand what's happening inside you. For men over 60, even simple remedies can carry hidden risks, especially when it comes to blood pressure, kidney strain, and the medications you might already be taking. And yes, it might help with circulation, it might help with performance, but it also might be giving your heart more than it can safely handle. Before you take another sip, give me a few minutes. Let's talk about how baking soda really works, who should avoid it, how to use it safely, and the one mistake too many older men are making without even knowing it. This isn't hype, it's your health, and you deserve the truth. Section 1. The remedy men whisper about where trust begins, but not with a doctor. It doesn't start with a diagnosis, not with a prescription pad, and certainly not in my office. It starts in smaller, quieter places. Over coffee with a friend who swears by it, in a video a nephew forwarded late one night, or in a comment section tucked beneath a photo of someone's morning tonic. Try this, it says. My uncle's been doing it for years, changed his life. And for men over 60, those words feel like a lifeline. By this age, most men have grown used to doing things on their own. They don't call the doctor unless they're in real pain. They don't mention fatigue. They just push through it. And when something feels off in the bedroom, they don't ask questions. They blame age, or stress, or just chalk it up to one of those things. Because somewhere along the line, they were taught that needing help meant losing something. That silence was strength, that real men figure it out on their own. So when they hear about something like baking soda, natural, inexpensive, tucked quietly into the pantry, they don't see it as medicine. They see it as permission. Permission to feel a little better without explaining themselves, to take action without appearing weak, to fix something, even privately, without surrendering control. I can't tell you how many times I've seen it. A man comes in for a routine visit. His numbers are off. His eyes are tired. But there's something else too, a flicker of hope beneath the fatigue. And eventually he tells me, Doc, I've been drinking baking soda in the mornings, just a bit. Saw online it's good for blood flow. Might help. Other things too. He says it softly, sometimes like a joke, sometimes like a confession, and always with that look, the one that asks, am I foolish for hoping this might help? And my answer is always the same. No, you're not foolish. You're trying. You're trying to feel like yourself again. And that matters. But what I've learned after all these years is this. That spoonful of white powder, it's never just about the chemistry. It's about dignity. It's about control. It's about a man trying to fix something no one ever taught him how to talk about. And I understand that deeply, because the men who reach for baking soda, they aren't reckless. They're resourceful. They're not desperate. They're determined. But determination without information can become danger, and that's where we begin. Have you ever tried something like this, quietly hoping it would help? If so, you're not alone. Feel free to share your story in the comments. It might help another man feel less alone too. Section 2. What baking soda actually does inside the body. Helpful or harmful? The real science. I always tell my patients this. Everything you put into your body has a reaction, even the things that seem harmless, especially the things that seem harmless. Baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, isn't just a kitchen ingredient. It's a powerful chemical compound, one that your body doesn't always welcome. When you swallow it, the first thing it does is reduce stomach acid. That can feel good. Less heartburn, less bloating. But the effect doesn't stop there. That same chemical action gets absorbed into your bloodstream. And for some men, especially over 60, That's where the real risk begins, because baking soda is loaded with sodium. And when you add more sodium to an aging body, especially one already dealing with high blood pressure, kidney stress, or water retention, you're not just neutralizing acid, you're throwing off an entire internal balance. The heart feels it first, an elevated heart rate, irregular rhythm, that strange pounding in the chest after what seemed like a harmless drink. The kidneys feel it next. They struggle to flush out the excess. For men with declining kidney function, and many don't even know they have it, this creates a slow, silent buildup of strain. I once had a patient, Mr. Randall, 68, who said something that stayed with me. I figured if it's in my kitchen, it can't hurt me. He meant it earnestly. And honestly, it's how most men over 60 think about remedies like baking soda. After all, it's not a pill, it's not synthetic, it's cheap, natural, familiar, something your father might have stirred into a glass after a heavy meal. So how bad could it be? Here's what I gently told him, and what I wish more men knew. Baking soda, or sodium bicarbonate, is a base. When it enters your stomach, it neutralizes acid. That's why it feels good when you have heartburn or indigestion. The reaction is almost immediate. But what most don't realize is this: that same chemical reaction doesn't stay in the stomach. It moves, it gets absorbed into your bloodstream, and that's where the body begins to whisper its objections. Because with every teaspoon of baking soda, you're not just changing acidity, you're adding sodium, a lot of it. And for a man in his 60s, that extra sodium isn't just salt. It's a challenge to a heart that may already be stiffening, to kidneys that filter slower than they once did, to blood vessels trying to hold their pressure steady. When sodium increases, your body retains more fluid. More fluid raises blood pressure. Raised pressure forces your heart to pump harder. And over time, that wear and tear becomes more than just feeling off. It becomes dizziness, shortness of breath, a strange pounding in the chest after you've done nothing but sit. And in some men, it becomes a trip to the ER. If you're also taking medications, like ACE inhibitors, water pills, NSAIDs, or heart rhythm drugs, this sodium bump can clash with your chemistry in quiet, dangerous ways. Electrolytes shift, blood pressure surges, the kidneys strain to keep up. And the scary part? You might not feel it until it's too late. It doesn't mean baking soda is evil. In some medical situations, like metabolic acidosis or specific poisonings, we doctors do use it, but always with lab tests. Always in a controlled setting. Always knowing what the body can handle and what it can't. So when a man says, "I've been taking it for circulation," I hear what he really means. I just want to feel strong again. And I respect that. But strength doesn't come from reacting fast. It comes from responding wisely. Your heart, kidneys, and brain, they don't care how natural something is. They care how much, how often, and whether the body still has the margin to carry the load. Baking soda might help you feel better in the stomach, but if it's quietly burdening your heart and blood vessels, then you're trading short-term relief for long-term risk. And you deserve better than that. If you've ever used baking soda and noticed anything, good or bad, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Sometimes those small stories teach more than any textbook can. Section 3. The hidden risks most men miss. Trying to do something good and ending up in harm's way. Mr. Harold was 72. He came in with a gentle smile and that familiar shrug I've seen too many times. "Doc, I don't want to waste your time. Probably nothing." But something about the way he moved, slower, heavier, like his legs were dragging more than usual, made me ask a few more questions. And then he said it. "I've been doing baking soda in the morning, just a bit, every day. Saw someone online say it helps with energy, blood flow, even sleep." That's the moment I paused, because it's not just what he was doing, it's how he was doing it, daily, without breaks, without guidance, and without noticing what his body had been trying to say. When I asked if he'd been feeling any bloating or tightness in the chest, he said yes, but chalked it up to age. Dizziness? Only when I stand too fast. Shortness of breath? That's just the stairs these days. But these aren't harmless quirks. They're warning signs, and most men brush them off until they become loud. You see, the risks don't always show up with pain. They show up in patterns: swelling in the feet that wasn't there last month, an afternoon nap that turns into 2 hours of fog, a heartbeat that skips once, then again. And what makes it harder is the way men are wired to respond. They don't complain. They don't want to seem dramatic. They don't want to admit they might have made a mistake. So instead, they keep going. Another teaspoon, another glass, convincing themselves that if it works for others, it must be fine for them too. But baking soda isn't aspirin. It's not one size fits all. And when combined with other common ingredients, lemon juice, apple cider vinegar, or even honey, you're not just mixing tastes, you're mixing chemistry. Lemon is acidic, vinegar is acidic, baking soda is alkaline. When you combine them without knowing the balance, you create reactions in the stomach and bloodstream that may look harmless. But inside, they're pushing pH, blood pressure, and mineral balance off course. And if your kidneys are already filtering slower, that shift may be subtle until it isn't. I've seen men with heart palpitations blamed on stress. I've seen men with bloating treated for reflux, when the real issue was sodium overload. I've seen bruises, fatigue, foggy thinking, all brushed aside because they didn't seem serious enough. But this is the pattern: good intentions, a quiet change, a trusted home remedy, and then an unexpected crisis. That's why I say, if you're using baking soda, daily, long-term, or in combination with other natural aids, you need to listen more closely to your body. It always speaks. But if you ignore the whispers, they'll turn into shouts, and eventually into symptoms you can't ignore. You're not wrong for trying, but you might be missing what your body's trying to say back. If you felt a little off since starting something new, even if it seems small, don't be afraid to ask about it. Your story could be the one that helps another man catch something early. Section 4. The bedroom belief. Separating fact from folklore. Does it really help with intimacy, or is that just hope talking? It usually starts with a pause. A man will be talking about energy, circulation, digestion, and then he slows down. He looks down at his hands. And after a moment, "Doc, someone said it helps, in the bedroom." He says it softly, not out of shame, but caution. Because for many men, admitting that things have changed feels like admitting defeat. So when they hear that something as simple as baking soda might help, they cling to it. Not because they're gullible, but because they're human, and the belief spreads. That guy on YouTube said it helped. My neighbor said it gave him more stamina. My buddy swears by it. But here's the truth. Baking soda doesn't boost testosterone. It doesn't increase libido. It doesn't fix vascular function in any reliable or lasting way. What it can do, in very specific cases, is reduce muscle fatigue in athletes by managing lactic acid. That's why some bodybuilders use it for short-term endurance. But those are trained bodies under controlled use, not 65-year-old men with blood pressure meds and kidney strain. Yes, improving circulation can help performance, but better intimacy after 60 isn't about pushing your heart harder. It's about supporting it gently. It's also about honesty with yourself, with your partner, and if possible, with your doctor. Because behind every question about performance is often a deeper one. Am I still enough? And I want to say this clearly, you are. Intimacy is about more than blood flow. It's about presence, about confidence, about safety, comfort, and shared trust. And none of that comes from a teaspoon. So if you've been stirring baking soda into your morning glass, hoping it will restore something you feel you've lost, I understand. But I also want to offer you something more valuable: knowledge. Because when you understand what truly affects your body, your hormones, your circulation, your emotions, you stop guessing, you stop grasping, and you begin choosing wisely and with dignity. If this part of the conversation spoke to something you felt but rarely voiced, a quiet concern, a question you weren't sure how to ask, I invite you to like this video. And if you want to keep learning how your body changes, Not just as a man, but as a man aging with strength? I'd be honored if you subscribed. Because in the next part, we're going to talk about something most men never hear clearly: who should never use baking soda at all, and who, just maybe, might try it with care. Let's get honest about the real limits of the aging body and how to work with them, not against them. Section 5, who should never use it, and who might, with caution. A doctor's guide to safe use, if you really want to try. There's a moment I dread when a man sits across from me, hopeful, sincere, believing he's finally found something that works. And I have to be the one to say, this may be doing you more harm than good. But I say it with care, because it's never about scolding. It's about protecting someone who didn't know. So let's be honest. Baking soda is not dangerous for everyone. But for some men with certain conditions, it can tip the body into real trouble. If you're over 60 and have high blood pressure that isn't tightly controlled, this isn't the remedy for you. Each teaspoon delivers over 100 milligrams of sodium, more than half your daily limit. That's a heavy load for a vascular system already under pressure. If you have a history of heart rhythm problems, palpitations, irregular heartbeat, fluttering at night, baking soda may make it worse because it affects your electrolyte balance, especially potassium and calcium. And those shifts can trigger arrhythmias in vulnerable hearts. If your kidneys aren't filtering well, or your creatinine levels are off, this powder puts more strain on already overworked organs. And then there's the medication factor, the part too few men think about. Are you taking ACE inhibitors, water pills, NSAIDs like ibuprofen, heart meds like beta blockers? If yes, adding baking soda may interfere in dangerous ways. I've seen it. Swollen legs, sudden confusion, sodium levels quietly spiking. This isn't just natural versus chemical. It's about whether your body can handle the extra burden right now. So, who might consider using it carefully? If you're generally healthy, with stable blood pressure, good kidney function, and no conflicting medications, maybe. But that maybe must come with respect. No more than 1/4 to half a teaspoon per day, always dissolved in a full glass of water, never on an empty stomach, no longer than 7 to 10 days without a break. And even then, watch your body closely. Headaches, muscle cramps, heart fluttering, bloating. If something feels off, stop. But more than anything, don't start alone. Talk to your doctor. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to want it done right. You wouldn't borrow someone else's heart medication. Don't borrow their kitchen remedy either, unless it fits your body, your chemistry, your age. You deserve better than blind trust. You deserve clarity, and real control starts with understanding what your body can truly handle. If any part of this made you pause, even just for a second, leave a comment or question below. That hesitation? That's your body asking for care. And in the next part, we'll talk about the moment that changes everything. Not the remedy, but the conversation. The one where men stop guessing and finally start healing. Section 6, the conversation that changes everything. The moment men stop guessing and start healing. It doesn't happen when I'm holding a stethoscope or reviewing lab results. It happens after I close the chart. After we've talked about cholesterol, blood pressure, prescriptions. That's when it begins. A man lingers, adjusts his sleeve, glances at the door like he might leave, but then doesn't. And softly, like asking permission, he says, "Doc, can I ask you something else?" He fidgets, clears his throat, maybe chuckles awkwardly. But eventually, the words come, or don't. Sometimes it's just a gesture, or a single phrase. "I just don't feel like myself anymore." And I know what he means. He means energy that's faded, desire that's distant, a body that no longer responds the way it once did, not just physically, but emotionally. And when I lean in, when I give him the space to keep going, I see something deeper. A man who spent years trying to fix things quietly, through vitamins, through workouts, through baking soda, through silence. A man who hasn't told anyone, not even his wife, that something feels lost. I want to tell you something. If that man is you, that moment you speak up, it's not weakness. It's the most courageous step you'll take. Because once you tell your doctor the truth, we stop treating just symptoms and start seeing the real story. We can check hormone levels. We can assess circulation, medications, sleep, nutrition, emotional strain. We can build a plan, one that fits your life, not just your numbers. But more than that, we can walk the path together. I've seen it over and over. Men who waited too long. Men who assumed it was just age. Men handed a quiet grief, the feeling that something important was fading, and were too proud or too unsure to ask. And I've also seen what happens when they do ask. Their wives breathe easier, their eyes brighten, their strength returns, not just in the body, but in the heart. Because health after 60 isn't just about blood flow. It's about connection, about being known, about not carrying everything alone anymore. So if you've been sipping something every morning, hoping it fixes what you haven't told anyone about, let this be the moment you tell someone. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's your doctor. Maybe it's your partner. But don't keep guessing. You've done that long enough. If this feels close to home, if you've been quiet for too long, I hope you'll say something in the comments, because healing begins when the silence ends. This cup doesn't define you. A final word from one man to another. If you've made it this far, I want to tell you something that I've said to many men, but perhaps not enough have heard. That glass in your hand every morning, that teaspoon of baking soda you stirred in with quiet hope, it doesn't define your strength. I know why you reach for it. Not because you're reckless, not because you're desperate, but because no one ever taught you how to ask the questions you really needed answers to. You were told to push through fatigue, to dismiss discomfort, to ignore changes that felt too personal to name. And so you did what men do. You tried something simple, something natural, something that promised strength without needing permission, explanation, or vulnerability. But here's the truth no one told you when you turned 60. Real strength is not silent. It's not self-reliant to the point of harm. It's not pretending you're fine when something inside you is quietly struggling. Real strength is knowing when to pause, when to ask, when to listen to your own body. Not just push it harder, because the strongest men I know aren't the ones who never break. They're the ones who knew when to reach out before things broke too far. So if you've been using baking soda or thinking about it, I respect that. I see the effort in it. I see the man in it. But I want you to also see this. You are more than what you mix into a glass. You are more than the performance you measure. You are a whole man, one with history, pain, pride, and still possibility. You deserve guidance that honors your dignity, support that protects your health, answers that don't make you feel small for asking. So maybe the real remedy you've been looking for wasn't in the powder. Maybe it's in the courage to ask, the wisdom to learn, and the decision to walk forward, not alone, but informed. Because the next chapter of your health isn't about restoring what was. It's about reclaiming what still is. If this story or this message touched something in you, a quiet place you haven't shared, I'd be honored if you'd leave a comment. Sometimes just one man speaking up helps another man find the words too. If this video gave you clarity, a like helps it reach others. Subscribe if you want to keep learning what your body's trying to tell you after 60. And if you know someone silently stirring their own glass each morning, a friend, a brother, a father, share this with him. This isn't just about baking soda. It's about being seen. And brother, I see you.